CBS Radio News, Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
News Talk 1240.
I'm becoming increasingly convinced that we're all going to be immortal by the year 2020, and we'll all have our brains uploaded to some sort of strange machine that will keep our consciences alive for the rest of forever. Well, we're not quite there yet, unfortunately, but a British man has inched his way closer to that realization. A British man has received the world's first bionic eye implant for macular degeneration. Now, I know that's not quite being uploaded to a machine to have your consciousness spread through some sort of global system that will link us all together in a way which was never previously imagined, and all war will suddenly vanish thanks to us all listening to the Grateful Dead. Well, we're not quite there yet. A British man has become the first person in the world to receive a bionic eye implant that corrects for age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. No, not the chip manufacturer. The most common cause of vision loss in adults. The implant was a success, and previously the patient had no central vision whatsoever. And now he has low-resolution central vision. The operation was carried out at Manchester Royal Eye Hospital. The recipient of the implant was Ray Flynn, who's 80 years old. The macula is at the back of the eye in the central region of the retina, and it's responsible for all of your high-res central vision. That is, when you gaze directly at something, it's the visual receptors in the macula that turn the light that reaches them into vision. So when those macula degenerate, then you can't really see anything that's directly in front of you. You have to use your peripheral vision, which is a little bit different. So it's the visual receptors that turns that into vision. With AMD, or macular degeneration, detritus called drusen slowly builds up between the vascular layer of the eye, the choroid, and the retinal pigment area called the RPE, the layer that rods and cones are attached to. So if too much drusen builds up, the blood flow to the RPE is reduced enough that the rods and cones will wither, thus you lose your sight. AMD actually happens quite slowly, but eventually it can result in a complete loss of central vision, which makes it pretty hard to recognize faces, to read books, to interact with computers, and so on. AMD is common amongst older people, and as our average life expectancy continues to increase, so does the number of people with AMD. About 500,000 people have it in the UK, and between 2 and 3 million people have it in the United States. Which brings us neatly onto the Argus 2. A retinal prosthesis made by Second Sight, which may be a brand that you're familiar with because Second Sight has developed quite a few similar technologies. The Argus 2 consists of two parts, an internal implant and external equipment that the patient must wear. The implant has an electrode array that is embedded in the eye's retina, a battery, and a wireless antenna. Externally, there's a pair of glasses that has a forward-facing camera and a radio transmitter and a belt-worn video processing unit. Now, that's pretty dang bulky. We'll all admit that. But it's one step closer to having a true bionic eye. The camera captures the scene in front of the implantee and sends that signal to the VPU for processing. That processed signal is then sent back to the glasses, where a transmitter beams a signal over to the implant's antenna. And finally, the video is output to the electrode array, which in turn stimulates the optic nerve, which gives you sight. The electrode array has a resolution of about 60 pixels, which is enough for the implantee to track the movement of objects, to see simple patterns and shapes, or to slowly read large letters. The vision provided by the Argus 2 implant is in monochrome as well, although some research groups are working on encoding the electrode stimuli so that the brain can perceive color, although that has not yet been achieved. We are quickly reaching that point. So as it is now, you can't actually see any color with this particular implant. However, you can see black and white. So black and white, 60 pixels by 60 pixels. That's not the best vision in the world, but it's not bad. You know, in terms of no sight or pretty bad sight, I think I would take the pretty bad sight as a compensation, I suppose. So it's not bad, actually, when it comes right down to it. And plus, this is a sort of an infant technology. We're swiftly moving forward in towards making us a lot better at being able to develop bionics that could potentially save lives or make lives a lot better. Think about prosthetics and how they've changed the lives of quite a few people. Think about veterans who've lost legs while in combat. Now we can give people bionic legs that operate as though they were real. And sometimes they feel real enough. I just watched a TED Talk, actually, about a guy who had developed or helped to develop these leg implant, or not implants, pardon me, but leg prostheses that would work almost indistinguishably from an actual leg. And it had bending knees, bending ankles, and it was all operated with thought. So you could jog with it, you could dance with it. There's all sorts of things that you could do with these prosthetic legs. Now, granted, they're really expensive, but we're getting closer and closer to affordable options that can pull the same thing off. The prosthesis itself for the eyes isn't exactly new. It has previously been used to treat retinitis pigmentosa, another cause of vision loss. But this is the first time it's been used in a patient with AMD. Both the United States and the European Union have approved the Argus 2 for treating retinitis pigmentosa. So now it looks like Second Sight is performing a clinical trial to get it approved in the European Union for treating AMD. Technologically, it sounds like both the internal and the external equipment are the same. And in the video, which they have on Ars Technica, you can actually see the implant, which allows him to make out patterns and horizontal and vertical lines. So it's one baby step forward, but it is also a giant leap forward technologically speaking. We're getting closer and closer to the realization of actual eye implants that will make people's vision indistinguishable from perfect, regular, normal, organic vision. And that's something that really is very exciting when you think about it. Think about how we could at some point technically have vision that is even better than organic options. And there will be voluntary implants where people can decide to have implants where they say, you know, I'm not really happy with my vision. I want to be able to see in infrared. And they'll get implants for that. Or I'm not really happy with my vision. I want to be able to sense heat. So they have implants for that. And there's all sorts of different options. I want to be able to see electromagnetic waves if I so choose. And there'll be an option for that. It's really fascinating to think of the future of implantation. Now, it's also a little bit frightening because on the one hand, I think we're pretty much okay the way we're born usually. I mean, I was born with a relatively decent physique, we'll put it that way. My eyes are great. My spine's kind of messed up. My joints are going to be bad by the time I'm 50. But overall, I'm pretty okay, actually. I can operate just fine. Granted, I'm pretty young, but I can operate just fine. So when I get to be an old codger, maybe I'll get some implants to make me operate a little bit better. You know, I'm not really interested in the cosmetic side of it, really. You know, it's funny how most implants these days are for cosmetics. You know, you get Botox and you get facelift and you get all sorts of different things that don't actually really functionally do much of anything to help you out. It's just sort of there to be there. It's not actually functional. Now, it may help you in terms of your self-esteem, your self-image, and there's arguments for that, certainly. But when it comes down to, say, the actual functionality of it, it's not really there. It's sort of actually kind of vain in a sense. Now, again, there are genuine reasons for having cosmetic surgery, but it seems like a lot of it is more directed towards the whole I don't like the way I look, thus I'm going to change it aspect, which isn't well, I mean, you can do that, and I support your right to do that, but it's not what I would do, put it that way. I'm much more into functional implantation because that seems a lot more interesting to me. That seems a lot more, well, functional, I guess. So I can't wait to see the future of implantation to see how that actually works out. A Silk Road heroin dealer who allegedly, anyway, helped out the feds to get Ross Ulbright arrested is going to be serving 2.5 years in prison. Michael Dutch, who sold heroin on the Silk Road and later testified at the trial of the site's founder, Ross Ulbright, was sentenced today to 2.5 years in prison, according to Reuters. Dutch never interacted with Ulbright, who went by his Dread Pirate Roberts name on his site. His testimony in February was used by prosecutors to demonstrate that Silk Road created additional dealers and users. So it seems that Dutch's testimony was integral to the conviction of Mr. Ulbright. He never actually interacted with Mr. Ulbright, who went by the name Dread Pirate Roberts. His testimony in February was used by prosecutors to demonstrate that the Silk Road created additional dealers and users. Dutch, whose online moniker was Diesel Time, which may be a reference to drugs that even I'm not aware of, said that he started selling drugs to support his own dope habit. Hey, nothing wrong with that, which at its peak was costing him $200 to $300 per day. How do people afford that, man? Like, I can't afford $200 to $300 a day no matter what. So how do people afford $200 to $300 a day just for a habit?
They steal.
Well, that's true. That possibly they steal. I should get into that. I should get into petty theft, and that way I can fund my computer habits. I can buy computer parts by stealing air conditioning and radio head units. Well, at sentencing today, Dutch's lawyer asked for him to be released immediately, saying that the drug addiction that led to his crimes is now behind him. U.S. District Judge Catherine Forrest said that she would give him a break on his sentence, but was not willing to release him immediately. The 2.5-year sentence is half of the 5-year mandatory minimum that Dutch would have faced if he had not cooperated with the government. He faced a maximum of 40 years in prison. Dutch apologized at the sentencing, because that makes a difference, saying that his arrest was like being slapped across the face and led him to an extremely painful but necessary path. Well, I mean, more power to him, I guess. Getting arrested was really slapped to the face. I'll never murder again. I really won't. In January, Dutch took the witness stand at Albright's trial, which was overseen by Forrest, to tell the jury about how he used Silk Road. He said that he would never have been a street dealer. He said, I saw the relative ease that came with Silk Road, and there was a personal level of safety as well as anonymity, which sort of negates the whole need to be a dealer on the street because you can safely not be one. Before he started dealing, Dutch was an IT consultant making about $75,000 annually. At the peak of his Silk Road heroin business, he was earning $60,000 to $70,000 per month. So that explains how he could fund that habit. Dutch's method for getting his supply was actually pretty simple. He bought heroin in bulk from the same street dealers that he patronized as a user, and then sold them on Silk Road at double the price or sometimes more. His ads promised East Coast-style heroin stamps with fast shipping as a selling point. Albright was then convicted in February and sentenced to life in prison in May, which is yet another proof that the internet really is a antithesis to any sort of prohibition, because no matter what kind of prohibition you throw at anything, it can still be sold on the internet. Legal or not, whether I agree with it or not, it still can be done, which makes it seem like kind of a frivolous effort sometimes, but I don't know. It's one of those things where, on the one hand, I don't really agree with using drugs. I'm not a drug user regularly myself, so I can't really condone the usage thereof. But on the other hand, I really don't care if you do either. So it's one of those sticky wickets, I guess, where on the one hand, I don't really care what you do. But on the other hand, it's probably not the best option. Well, Google Maps for Android, you can now finally add custom tags to your custom locations. So you can now add custom names for your different places that you have tagged in Google Maps. So Google Maps has added a timeline view to Android today, which allows users to easily view their location history on mobile. That's all well and good, according to Ars Technica, but it's buried in the new timeline feature. Is one of the most requested features that Google Maps has been lacking: custom place names. So you can pick a spot on the map, press some buttons, and then you can type in a name. And it seems like a very simple, basic functionality that every map application should have, but somehow Google Maps has neglected that feature up until now. So that's a new feature from Google Maps.
And we are live getting prepared for the event going on tonight in Saudi Daisy. There's going to be a memorial for the troops that were slain in Chattanooga. That's at Veterans Park here in Saudi Daisy. That'll be taking place at 7 o'clock tonight, Russell, and we will be here for the event.
Look forward to it. So that's tonight. Google Maps has now added a timeline to view Android today, which allows users to easily view their location history on mobile. So that's a new option that was not really there before, unfortunately. So what you can do now is you can tag different locations, and then you can select what name to put for them. So you can add different location tags and such. So like my house, for instance, is tagged on my Google Maps account as, well, my house. But if I want to say, my drug den, then I can label it as my drug den if I so choose. And that might not be an inaccurate label. Google Maps has added a timeline view to Android, which has now allowed you to do that. It's actually kind of hidden, but it is there. You'll need the just released Google Maps for Android version 9.12, which you can download on Google's website, which has a new timeline option in the navigation drawer. I know, Google's website is google.com, as a joke. The timeline is a new feature for mobile that allows you to browse your Google Maps location history. Location history has now been available on the desktop site for some time, and it was in the Android version until it was removed in 7.0, but now it's back. Why it was removed, heaven knows. So who knows why it was removed? It's one of those things where they're just trying to be as obnoxious as possible, I guess. I see that a lot, though, with mobile apps. You'll have an option that seems to be completely reasonable, and then it'll just get removed for no reason. I don't know why that is. It seems like app updates are more trouble than they're worth sometimes, because you just lose stuff, and it's just, no thanks, man. Well, surgery is something that I've always sort of been interested in. Not so much surgery as much as just the medical field in general. I've really been sort of interested in the medical field because it's one of those fields where you really can help people. It's an occupation that allows you to directly help people. And we're just now getting breaking news from the FBI where the shooter in that tragic accident, or incident, I should say, that occurred on Thursday. The shooter was engaged by a service member at the Naval Center, according to these reports. And apparently the shooter did not get out of his vehicle, according to an FBI press conference, which is ongoing right now. We're going to try to gather notes on that. We'll bring it to you as soon as we can. But the shooter entered a naval building and continued shooting, according to the FBI. So we'll bring you more information on that as soon as it pops up here on Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240. The press conference is still ongoing. As soon as there's a transcription, we'll bring it to you here, Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240. Muscle-inspired surgical glue has shut down bleeding wounds in 60 seconds. Muscle is in M-U-S-S-E-L, as in clams and such. The ability of muscles to stubbornly bind themselves to underwater surfaces has intrigued scientists for years. And scientists are intrigued by the most mundane things. If this ability could be recreated in the lab, it could lead to new adhesives for all kinds of applications. A team of Korean scientists has now developed a surgical glue inspired by these natural wonders that's claimed to be cheaper, more reliable, and incur less scarring than existing solutions. In surgery, stitches and staples are very effective at binding body tissue together, but they can cause scarring, and they aren't always appropriate when treating more sensitive flesh and organs. These drawbacks have motivated the development of adhesives that are strong enough to hold tissue together in wet environments, and to do so without inciting adverse chemical reactions, such as rash or infection or boils or whatever. The proteins that muscles use to latch onto rocks, ships, and jetties in the face of crashing ocean waves has been the focus of much research in this area. In 2009, North Carolina State University researchers revealed the work aiming to develop a synthetic adhesive that combined these proteins with inkjet printer technology. So we've also seen MIT create waterproof adhesives inspired by these clingy compounds as well. So we've always sort of wondered, how do muscles actually link on to different substances, and how do they link onto walls and such? Well, now it appears that we've found out, and we're going to be using that particular solution as an actual adhesive in the medical field. So the team from Korea found out that when they took muscle proteins chock full of tyrosines and exposed them to blue visible light, the photochemical reaction saw them instantly pair up to form these tyrosine intersections. The result was a material with better structural stability and adhesive properties. They have dubbed it light-activated muscle protein-based adhesive, or LAMBA, and claim to have proven its superiority to existing surgical glues. Soon it'll take over all different existing glues and become the current master glue that will take over all others. In testing the glue in animals, the scientists say that it was able to close bleeding wounds in less than 60 seconds and healed them without any inflammation or scarring, which means that you could technically have a solution that is that would require you to not have to go to the hospital if you get injured in a rather serious way. So it's an interesting solution to a rather serious problem, which is bleeding profusely. So if you are yourself bleeding profusely, well, you should probably get to a hospital. But also, eventually, there will be a solution for that. So hold on, try to hold back the bleeding, and eventually there will be a glue that will solve all of your bleeding problems. Wow. So this is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We are everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. Download the TuneIn Radio app and search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is also on Twitter, where your report the world decides. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You can save half off now. Go to hotnewstalkradio.com and click on the half off link for great deals. Hot News Talk Radio is saving you money. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You know, we got a lot of great programming here on Hot News Talk Radio as well. You know, we have Imus in the Morning, who's on from 6 to 9, and we have Laura Ingram as well from 9 to noon. On Tuesdays as well, we have Laura Ingram, and on what you're listening to right now is Digital Drive. We talk about technology and quite a bit more. Interestingly enough, we've been focusing on the medical field, but we're also going to be talking about a drone that crashed in Iraq and was taking photos the whole way down. We're going to be talking about that in just a few minutes as well. Nuganomics.com with David Toulis is on from 1 to 3 right here on Hot News Talk Radio. He talks about local economy and free markets from his own very Nuga-centric position right here on Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240. And we also have Sean Hannity, who's on as well, and he talks about national politics from his own very neocon perspective. We'll put it that way. I don't think you would disagree with that one. We also have Cowboy Up with Tex from 6 to 7. And at 5, we have Hot News Live at 5 here on Hot News Talk Radio, where we've got you covered. A drone crashed in Iraq and apparently was taking photos all the way. And this is sort of I don't know, breaking news is the right way to put it, but it's just now coming out. A U.S. surveillance drone crashed in Iraq And according to the article, a selfie ensued. I hate that word so much. The Pentagon this week confirmed that one of its drones crashed in Iraq after photos of the uncrewed aircraft began circulating on social media. In a statement to BuzzFeed, of all sources, a Pentagon spokesperson said that the MQ-1C Gray Eagle drone crashed on June the 16th as it was returning to base, adding that technical complications caused a loss of communications. We can assume that this is because it was built by Boeing and not built to last. Freelance journalist Steve Ishak tells BuzzFeed that he received photos of the crashed aircraft taken in a government-controlled desert region near the southern city of Samawa. Activist Stephen Nabel posted photos of the $21 million drone to his Twitter account, including a selfie taken directly in front of it. The drone, which was unarmed, was conducting surveillance and gathering intelligence in the region, The Hill is reporting.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing about my...
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, this is your computer speaking. I don't feel so well. It's like I've come down with a bug, and I'm getting slower.
Affordable Computers. We fix sick computers. Your hometown guys at Affordable Computers will repair your PC in half the time of the big boys at an affordable price. No tricks, no gimmicks, no computer speak techno babble. Just good, quick, and courteous affordable service and repairs. Want to affordably supercharge your PC? Affordable Computers on Highway 58. Affordable Computers hand builds all desktops in-house. If you're looking for a better-than-new refurb laptop, $150 will get you a Dell or another name brand at Affordable Computers. Affordable Computers, Highway 58, between Arby's and Taco Bell. Also Fort O, Battlefield Parkway near Holcomb's. Affordable Computers, we service what we sell. Call 499-1975. That's 499-1975.
Wow, this is amazing. I'm feeling great. Supercharged.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas, every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Do you feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts, Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts, Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducts. Call now.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
Host News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Host News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. North Dakota's strict law banning abortions when a fetal heartbeat can be detected, just getting struck down by a federal appeals court, agreeing with the decision that ruled the law was unconstitutional. Air travel could potentially be affected if some workers at JFK and LaGuardia airports hit the picket lines.
Security officers, baggage handlers, and wheelchair attendants with the Service Employees International Union say if demands for better treatment aren't met, picketing will start at Delta terminals at at 10 tonight and at LaGuardia at 6 tomorrow morning.
Fox Radio's Tanya J. Powers and singer Chris Brown, who couldn't get into Canada earlier this year, barred from leaving the Philippines this morning. The problem, fraud allegations over a no-show concert he was slated to headline for New Year's Eve. Promoters saying they're owed money. Fox News. We report. You decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
A U.S. surveillance drone actually crashed in Iraq. Now, don't worry, it wasn't armed, although it was very expensive, $21 million. That's how much the dang thing cost. Fortunately, we're not flying these over the United States so that they can crash and burn and supposedly have people take a bunch of pictures with them and probably start praying to them and who knows what else. The Pentagon this week confirmed that one of its drones crashed in Iraq after photos of the uncrewed aircraft began circulating on social media. In a statement that was sent to BuzzFeed News, a Pentagon spokesperson said that the MQ-1C Gray Eagle drone crashed on June the 16th as it was returning to base, adding that technical complications caused a loss of communications. So that shows you something kind of interesting. If it loses communications, it just crashes. So then that means, technically speaking, if you could make a jammer of some sort that would broadcast on that very same frequency that it receives its commands from, it would then just crash. There's no failsafe for loss of communications where it'll fly of its own accord and stay aloft and fly in a circle or something like that. No, apparently it just crashes due to lost communications. What if you could hijack that signal and broadcast your own command signal, commanding it to nosedive? Could that be done? This is something that needs to be explored because this could potentially be a huge security hole that needs to be filled. So if that's possible, that definitely needs to be checked out. Anyway, the drone, which was unarmed, fortunately, was conducting surveillance and gathering intelligence in the region. According to The Hill, which is citing a Pentagon spokesperson, the U.S. has deployed surveillance and armed drones across Iraq and Syria as part of its ongoing military campaign against the Islamic State. A military drone crashed in southern Iraq in May due to technical problems, 2 months after an Air Force drone was shot down in Syria. Photos of the drone that crashed this month show no signs that it was shot down. It appears to actually just sort of glided to a stop, believe it or not. Going by the photos here, it looks perfectly intact and can probably be easily repaired and sent back up in the air. A spokesperson for the Defense Department said that the military is working with Iraqi authorities to recover the craft. And still, though, a journalist managed to find the thing and take photos with it. So it was unarmed, although this particular journalist managed to find it. Freelance journalist Steve Ishak told BuzzFeed that he received photos of the crashed aircraft taken in a government-controlled desert region near the southern city of Samoa. The activist Stephen Nabil then posted photos of the $21 million drone to his Twitter account, including a selfie that was directly taken in front of it. And again, the drone appears to be actually in really good condition. The wings even look to be intact, as if they're not broken off or anything. So it appears that the drone could probably be repaired. And $21 million is certainly not a sum of money that you want to lose, especially in a time of warfare, although not technically a time of war. We haven't declared war in a long time, since like the 40s. So it's not technically a time of war. But anyway, the president's administration doesn't really want to blame China publicly for the Office of Personnel Management hack. There are good reasons for that, actually. It might be that the Chinese aren't responsible for the OPM hack. I mean, did anybody consider that angle? Like, maybe China didn't do it? I'm not a China apologist by any means, but it is certainly possible that China actually is not responsible for the OPM hack, and it's actually a private entity. Just saying. U.S. government officials are nearly certain that the Chinese government was involved in the theft of sensitive personal information about millions of government employees. Members of the U.S. military and employees of government contractors requiring background checks or security clearances from the systems of the Office of Personnel Management. But according to a report from the Washington Post, the Obama administration has decided to not publicly and officially call out China for the attack, in part because it might require the administration to reveal some of the U.S. hacking of China in order to make the case and expose other information intelligence and warfare capabilities of the National Security Agency, Department of Homeland Security, and the FBI. Now, that's an interesting angle. Let's break this down. Now, again, there's an economic angle here too. We kind of need China economically. So it's not like we can just ostracize and alienate China as a consumer base, because that's what we are. We are a consumer base for China. And a lot of our goods are from China. Like, we actually need China in order to survive economically. Kind of like Japan needs China and China needs Japan to exist economically. There are a lot of things that we have here that could not be manufactured without the Chinese. It's actually true. Think about all the different electronics. It says made in China on the back, made in China, or made in Taiwan. Now, Taiwan is not China, I know, or made in Japan. We need other economies to prop up our own economy. It's kind of odd, actually. So it's not like ostracizing China is actually a good idea. It's certainly not a sound idea, economically speaking. It doesn't work. In fact, if the Chinese get upset at us and say, you know what, we're going to cut back on selling X amount of things to you, that's kind of a bad move. And plus, China kind of needs us too, because we're a huge consumer base for China. So yeah, it's sort of a symbiotic relationship. We need each other, yin and yang, you might say. So the defeating of China economically is actually a very bad idea for us. If China's economy goes down, ours does too. So it's not a good idea to bully China, I suppose. Ellen Nakashima, who is the Post national security reporter, cited anonymous conversations with officials involved with the White House's decision-making process surrounding the OPM, and she reported that the administration had not ruled out economic sanctions or other punitive measures for the theft of data from OPM. But U.S. officials, including James Clapper, who's the director of national intelligence, have expressed grudging admiration for the OPM hack, saying that U.S. spy agencies would do the same against other governments, she reported. Part of the calculus that went into the decision, one official told Nakashima, was that we don't see enough benefit in doing the attribution at this point to outweigh whatever loss we might experience in terms of intelligence collection capabilities. Another official said that the White House might opt to simply put sanctions in place under the justifications and then privately communicate to the Chinese government that the sanctions were in fact in retaliation for the OPM hack. Again, making China upset would be an extremely bad move for us. I hate to put it that way, but that is how it is. Making China upset is terrible economically. I cannot stress enough how bad an idea it would be to make the Chinese mad at us when it comes to economics. Now, there are going to be people who say, well, Chinese don't matter. We'll do what we want. Well, it doesn't really work that way. We are actually not exactly a self-sufficient nation as it is. Think about it this way. I have in my phone in my hand, a phone. And that phone was manufactured. Guess where? China. Oh, I have in front of me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 computer screens. Where were those manufactured? Well, probably China, actually. A lot of them probably were. A lot of the components were probably manufactured there as well. I have in front of me a landline telephone, which you can call into, 423-800-8949. Where was that manufactured? Probably China. Where was my water bottled? Probably China. Where does half of my electronics come from? Probably China. Where are my car parts manufactured? Probably China. You start to get the picture? We kind of need China. So alienating China, economically speaking, is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea, and I really don't blame the president for this move. I actually don't. Now, this may be the only time you ever hear me defend anything that the president does, but I have to say, I understand this move. I'm not sure if I approve of it, but I certainly understand this move that the president has made. A researcher is angry because he found his own code in the hacking team malware. A security researcher has taken umbrage, I love that word, at Italian malware developer hacking team after discovering that his open source exploit tools were included in Android surveillance software sold to governments around the world. Colin Mulliner, well known in security circles for exposing vulnerabilities in mobile devices, published a blog post on Tuesday that attempts to set the record straight, to wit. His tools, which among other things surreptitiously captured conversations and other sounds within earshot of infected Android phones, and they were used without permission or notice by hacking team. He learned that the use only after, he learned about the use only after the breach of hacking team computers, which resulted in a 400 gigabyte leak of confidential company documents, including emails showing company engineers discussing Mulliner's tools. Now, again, there's something that has to be understood about security research. There's different hats. There's black hat, gray hat, and white hat hacking. A black hat hacking finds exploits and uses them. That's it. Black hat hacking is very malicious. Gray hat hacking is sort of in between. And then white hat hacking is where you find an exploit, you don't sell it, and you tell the system administrator about it immediately so that they can then fix it. That's white hat hacking. There's different hats. And then there's red hat, which is a distribution of Linux. So go figure. But there are different hats that are involved in hacking. And it appears that Mr. Milliner was a white hat hacker because he did not use these things for personal gain instead, or maybe he did, but only for just monetary things like I wrote a book about it after it was fixed, that sort of thing. But he doesn't seem to have done these things in a malicious sort of way. That's just security research. That's good and necessary, and it has to happen in order to have any sort of secure phone. If we know about the exploits that are capable with our cell phones, then we can be safer that way, because now we know how to avoid being exploited. In Tuesday's blog post, he wrote, "I'm pretty angry and sad to see my open source tools being used by hacking team to make products to spy on activists. Even worse is the fact that due to the lazy way they managed their source repository, less informed people might get the idea that I developed their parts of the tools for them. Just to make this very clear," he says, "I did not write any of those tools for hacking team. For the future, I will use a license for all my software that excludes the use of this kind of purpose. I have no clue yet how this license would look like, or rather what this would look like. So if anybody has a hint about pre-existing open source licenses that exclude this kind of usage, please drop me an email." Obviously, Hacking Team also uses other open source software such as Cuckoo Sandbox. I hope everyone, or rather everybody, is going to think about the future license to prevent this kind of usage. I'm not a lawyer, but I would be interested in what legal action one could take if their software license excluded the kind of use that Hacking Team used. Moliner said that he received an email following the data dump from someone who formed the mistaken impression that Mr. Moliner had designed the Android tools with Hacking Team in mind. He said that the false impression is understandable when reading through Hacking Team's source code, which along Moliner's Android dynamic binary instrumentation tool includes his name, website, and email address. It would not be surprising if Moliner's contributions form only a small part of the open source software that's folded into Hacking Team's products, which leaked sales invoices show were sold to repressive governments in Sudan, Ethiopia, Egypt, and elsewhere, possibly not the United States, although that is a repressive government. So it's interesting to see that tools are being used by different regimes in order to spy on people who use Android phones. Presumably, Apple already has tools for use for Apple phones, but anyway. Now, it's interesting to point out that they mention there that Android phones could be used to listen to conversations happening up to 300 feet away. Now, that's not surprising, actually. Activating the microphone on an Android phone is probably not too hard, believe it or not. And using that in order to spy on somebody that's not a surprising usage for that technology. I'm actually more surprised that this hasn't been done before, and it probably has been. So, keep that in mind. When you're carrying your phone on you, you are carrying a tracking device. There's no way around that. When you have your phone on your person, then your person can be tracked. If you have your phone in your car, then your car can be tracked. If you have your phone in your house, then your house can be tracked as well. Your phone is essentially a tracking beacon, which we all carry around with us. And I'm guilty of that too. I carry one. I'm not saying don't carry your phone. I'm saying continue business as usual, but know that when you have your phone on you, essentially you have no expectation of privacy. Now, I would say that legally you do have a reasonable expectation of privacy when you're in your own home on your cell phone, but assume that you don't, unfortunately. If you have a cell phone on your person, don't get into sensitive conversations, put it that way. If you have a cell phone on you, don't get into any sort of conversation that you wouldn't want anyone to hear. We'll put it that way. Because if you do, then probably it can be heard. So it's interesting that we have all these security apparatuses that are existing, but unfortunately attacks still happen. Why is that? We have the NSA in place. We have the DHS in place. We have the State Department. We have everything else in place. And yet not really much is being solved in terms of, keeping us safe. Not really any solutions are being brought forward for that. The reason being is actually kind of shocking. At least the reason I think is kind of shocking. One likely scenario is this: threats have to exist. That's the sad truth of things. For you to take any sort of credence or to care at all about government protection, which we question even exists, there has to be some sort of threat. For you to know there's a threat, there has to be some sort of attack. For there to be an attack, there has to be an allowance for an attack. So it seems pretty obvious then that for you to believe you need government security, then there must be some sort of attack, which then they'll say will thwart in the future, which you'll then believe. So this, in a nutshell, is security. That, in a nutshell, is actually also the military-industrial complex, but in a nutshell, that is government surveillance. We believe there's a threat, and thus we will support any efforts to thwart those threats. It's scary, but that's how it is, actually. Think about it this way. What if nobody believed that there was any reason to have the NSA? What if everyone said, you know what, there's probably not any actual existential threat to the United States. We don't need the NSA. People would lose faith in the NSA, and nobody would care about them. Nobody would care about the NSA at all. Nobody would care about the protection of any sort of governmental entity. Nobody would care. And I would see that as a positive thing, but they don't, because they make money off of that. Lots of money off of that. How many contractors make tons of money building supercomputers for the NSA? Think about it. It's all about money. That's what it's always about, though. It's always about money. This is nothing new. Why is it that Walmart opened up down in East Brainerd? Because they can make money off of that. Why is it that there's a Publix over there, too? Because it's a profitable location. Why are there all these businesses downtown? Because it's profitable. The same reason there's all these different efforts to make us actually less secure in order to make us more secure. It's because money is being made. The NSA exists because lots of money is being made off of NSA surveillance. Who builds those supercomputer facilities, which the NSA then uses to data mine? Think about it. It's not the government. The government doesn't build it itself, right? Government contracts everything out. Think about infantry weapons. What does our infantry use? The M16A3, I believe, is what's being used now, and there's the M4 that's being used. But the government doesn't build those guns. Remember, the government doesn't really build anything, despite what the president may want you to believe. The government doesn't actually build anything. Contractors build those things. What about Humvees, right? What about Pasget armor, which they don't use anymore? What about Mitch armor? What about all these different apparatuses that are built by contractors? It's not built by the government. There's no government facility that builds guns. There's no government facility that builds ammunition. It's all contract work. So why is it then that we see all these different agencies that are buying up millions and millions of rounds of ammunition, or millions and millions of guns, or Humvees, or what have you? Because somebody's palm is getting greased. That's how it is. That's the very nature of it. That's the very nature of war. Somebody's making money off of it, and that's just how it is. I'm not saying that to be edgy or to be cool or grimdark or whatever. No, it's just the nature of things. That's history. Look back at history, and it's pretty well obvious that different very oppressive regimes have been funded by rather large companies because there's money to be made there. Morals go out the window when we're talking about a lot of big businesses. Morals will just go straight out the window because there's money to be made. A committee doesn't really seem to have any form of morals. Just as a statue is not built for a committee, it appears that committees don't really adhere to any form of morals either. And that's just how it is. That's just the nature of things. And unfortunately, a lot of people are either not aware of that or are very apathetic towards that. And so the trend continues. Think about it this way. If there was a single person in Congress who really cared about this sort of thing, you'd think that we would be hearing them speaking out about it, right? You'd think that if somebody wanted in Congress to stop war, that person in Congress would be calling out the reason for war, right? They'd be calling out why we keep having all these wars, right? You think that somebody would call out like Boeing and Lockheed as being huge manufacturers, and the reason that we keep going to war is to fund those huge manufacturers. I mean, the Department of Defense is the #1 largest consumer, period. Lots of people don't know that, but that's true. The government spends more money than any other entity ever. And that's something that a lot of people don't know, but it is true. And the reason being that we don't have anyone in Congress calling them out is because most likely they've been bought out. You kind of have to be in Congress. There have been very few exceptions to that rule. One that comes to mind, of course, is Ron Paul, and I'm sure there have been others. Justin Amash seems to be a rather honest guy, but very few examples, and they're sort of flukes, actually. I mean, look at your Lindsey Grahams and your John McCains, and really, can you tell yourself that these people haven't been bought out when it comes right down to it? Of course not, because they have. That's just how it is. Money controls everything in this world. Even in socialist countries, money controls everything. Money and power control everything, even in countries which claim to be against money and power, even against regimes which claim to be against money and power. Money and power still control them. Look at all these socialist nations which are like, well, we need money. Well, I thought you were against money. Yeah, but we need money. It's contradictory, and it's not surprising either, honestly. There's a new vulnerability that will let attackers hijack your Chrysler vehicle, which is yet another reason not to buy an American car. New vulnerability lets attackers hijack Chrysler vehicles over the net. So, a new vulnerability in the Uconnect system is giving attackers frightening remote powers over Chrysler vehicles. That's been revealed in a Wired exclusive report. In a live demo, attackers used the vulnerability to cut out a Jeep Cherokee's transmission and brakes, and when the car was in reverse, they could commandeer the steering wheel as well, all without any physical access to the vehicle. So usually when we think about a carjacking or when we think about stealing a car, we think about actually physical connectivity to that car. Like, to cut your brake lines, I have to actually touch your car, right? To mess with your fuel line, I have to touch your car. To mess with your steering, I have to actually touch your car, right? Well, not with this Uconnect exploit. Chrysler's Uconnect system uses Sprint's cellular network for connectivity, so researchers were actually able to remotely locate cars by scanning for devices using that particular spectrum band. Chrysler has been including Uconnect in cars since late 2013, and any cars that use that system are likely to be vulnerable to the attack. There's no apparent firewall, so once attackers have located the device's IP, they can deploy previously developed exploits to rewrite Uconnect's firmware and control the car as if they had physical access to it. The result is that once an attacker has a car's IP address, she can target it from anywhere in the country. So any sort of attacker can target any car from anywhere in the country so long as they have the IP address for that car. Well, the good news for Chrysler drivers is there's already a patch, but it probably hasn't reached your car yet. Chrysler released a patch on the 16th, but it has to be installed manually either by a dealership or manually via a USB stick, which you plug in. It can be downloaded on Chrysler's website, by the way, if you want to get that. So go to Chrysler's website, and you can actually get that fix if you want to. The vulnerability has also inspired government action as new automotive security bills are being introduced in the Senate alongside the report. Thanks, guys. So your car, if it is indeed connected, can technically be exploited even easily. If you have the know-how, you could exploit a car such as that one actually quite easily. So if you have a Chrysler that has Uconnect that's from 2013 or newer, then you might want to take that to a dealer to get it fixed, or ask your clever nephew to fix it for you with a USB stick, because you definitely don't want your car to be exploited in such a way. Now, what gain could there be for somebody to do that? Not a whole lot, actually, but the potential is still there. I wouldn't want to take the risk of driving a car that could potentially be hacked into. Isn't that such a weird thing, though, to think about a car that can be hacked into? Who would ever think of such a thing? Where it's just cars shouldn't have computers in them anyway. For me, the simpler the better when it comes down to cars. I want a car that has an engine and a stick shift and a steering wheel and maybe a seat. And that's pretty much all I need. You know, I don't like the whole, oh, my car has all these bells and whistles and it will park itself by itself. And no thanks, man. I just need a car that has a cool radio that I can hook up with Bluetooth, and that's about it. That's as far as the computerization goes. I just want to be able to hook up my Bluetooth phone and listen to tunes, and that's about it. This is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. We're talking about technology and quite a bit more. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We are everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com, or download the TuneIn Radio app and search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is also on Twitter, where you report the world of sides. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You can save half off now. Go to hotnewstalkradio.com and click on the half off link for great deals. Hot News Talk Radio is saving you money. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We have a lot of great programming here as well on Hot News Talk Radio. We have Nuganomics.com with David Toulis, which is coming up in just a few minutes right here. Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240. He talks about local economy and free markets from his own very Nuga-centric position, which is the idea that we should be thinking locally instead of nationally, and that buying from the little guy is much more sustainable than buying from the big corporation, because the national economy is bound to collapse, but the local economy is bound by much stronger fiber, which is ourselves.
This is a modern world. This is the modern world. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing of
Arnie Guest Goldsmith, Chattanooga's gold standard in quality, selection, and beautifully handcrafted jewelry. Arnie Guest Goldsmith has 7 jewelers on site and ready to assist you in the design of your one-of-a-kind diamond piece. Arnie Guest Goldsmith, Chattanooga's gold standard in quality, selection, and beautifully handcrafted jewelry. Arnie Guest Goldsmith has 7 jewelers on site and ready to assist you in the design of your one-of-a-kind diamond piece to the perfect affordable handcrafted gem. From just $20 silver earrings to your dream elegant work of art to adorn your finger, neck, and wrist, impressing your friends and family, Arnie Guest Goldsmith will ensure that your budget is met. Planning the perfect wedding or a special event? Then let Arnie Guest Goldsmith assist you in choosing or designing the keepsake that will last you a lifetime. All of Arnie Guest Goldsmith repairs and crafting are done in-house, so you can be rest assured that it will meet or exceed your expectations. For over 30 years, Arnie Guest Goldsmith has served Chattanooga with the finest jewelry and services, meaning only the highest quality and standards. So the next time you think of jewelry, custom design, remounting, appraisals, or repairs, remember Arnie Guest Goldsmith. And please visit Arnie Guest Goldsmith at 5090 Adams Road, Hickson. That's 5090 Adams Road, Hickson. Call 875-2390. That's 875-2390. Or go to jewelryfromscratch.com. That's all one word, jewelryfromscratch.com. Jewelryfromscratch.com. Arnie Guest Goldsmith of Chattanooga.
Surgery does not have to be financially painful. Hi, I'm Surgical Dr. David Red, and I'd like to invite you to my walk-in surgery clinic in North Shore. Quick Surge brings you immediate relief from moles, skin tags, maybe a laceration. Quick Surge. You walk in, fill out a mini form, I numb the area I'll treat, and before you know it, you're on your way home. Do I take insurance? No, because I take cash customers. I have super low and fixed prices, credit card, check, or cash. Uninsured? Member of the working financially disadvantaged? Choose Quick Surge. I publish prices online. No murk, just sunshine. Hassle-free, pain-free. Love the idea of a personal relationship with a doctor? Drop in with a nasty cut from work. Quick Surge. I'll take care of you. Quick Surge in the Public Center on the North Shore. No insurance hassles with Quick Surge. The national medical system is dysfunctional, overpriced, very alienating. I'm part of the solution, and so are you. Come on home. QuickSurge.com. QUIKSURG. Relief.
If you have the DTs, the shakes, because your phone is on the fritz, you have nomophobia. You need help. Your telecom doctor is in. Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall. Cell Surgeon yanks open the ribcage of your phone, pries out the dead heart, and puts in the beating life that you lead on your cell phone. Broken screen, phone not charging, water damage, battery given out? Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall next to Old Chicago Pizza. Check us out on Facebook. Open Sunday. Cell Surgeon. We bring your phone back to life.
Mention Hot News Talk Radio and get 10% off.
You do not have to be living with constant pain. You need to make the choice today to enjoy a revitalized body. You deserve to live a better pain-free life. And Dr. Ross can help. At Ross Chiropractic, failure is not an option.